Overdue. The clock chimed 11 as I tore through the pile of books. Antique and paperback alike were flung to the hardwood floor. I could almost hear my grandfather's pained cries as the spines cracked. He was dead, however, and the needs of the living were far more critical. "Where is it?" I muttered to myself, furtively scanning the covers. A slim novel, a worn paperback, was the object of my search. Outside the library's expansive bay windows, trees careened their arms within the gale-like breeze. Last night, following my grandfather's final moments, this search began. I sat next to him in his bedroom. Low yellow lights cast long shadows over us both. Illness shriveled the broad frame he'd carried through his life. Dark bruising mottled his hands where the ivy connected. His manner was labored. Even sipping from the tumbler at his side wore him out. Plastic tubing descended from his nose towards an oxygen tank at the foot of the bed. My fingers clasped his as I watched his chest raggedly rise and fall. "Pinky." "Yeah," I smiled. "Would you return a library book for me?" Return a library book? My mirth must have been obvious, because his caterpillar-like eyebrows pulled into a deep V. He shook his head. "It's important, Pinky. The library closed, but she wants the book returned." "She?" I felt my stomach turn. He nodded. "Gulliver's Travels. She'll come for it." Slowly, his eyelids, nearly transparent with age, closed. "Grandpa, who is she?" He was never able to answer, but I soon found out. Rain pattered the windows as the world eased into its navy slumber. Grandfather was nestled in the back of the coroner's van. His body appeared waxen, hollow, and foreign. I retreated to the threshold's darkness. Home for me was a day away. Weariness soaked into my joints. I had taken the weekend from work to get his affairs settled, and, if I was honest, I didn't want to be around people. I wasn't a crier. It was a trait I'd gathered from my grandfather. He had been a stoic man. A good man. But stoic. He did not cry when my grandmother died. Grief etched itself into his gait, the way he rocked in his chair. Still, I didn't know how his death would settle with me. I mirrored him at my own mother's passing, but a decade eked by in the time since I'd seen her. The courts deemed this the best course of action. Since grief of an intimate kind was foreign to me, I cautioned into the weekend alone. Lashing out in grief would not be the way to honor his memory. After all, he'd raised me as best he could. Every Saturday, after a long week of working at the mill, he took me to the library. He intended for me to finish one book by the time we returned. I chuckled, remembering the faux shrewish look the librarian would shoot his way before he dramatically returned outside to wipe his boots on the mat. "Sorry, Mrs. Franklin," he grinned. "Just didn't want them overdue." The amusement lingered as I flicked the light on in his reading room. Multiple bronze lamps immediately illuminated the cozy space. The glow revealed 5 or 6 built-in shelves. They smiled at me in the manner of a friend at a funeral. Though we hadn't met in a few years, gentle memories eased the loss. My condolences. Gulliver's Travels, huh? My eyes lazily scanned the spines. The title in question was far from view. My vision blurred. Shaking my head, I settled into his chair. "Sorry, Grandpa. I promise tomorrow." The padding enveloped my frame in its embrace. Weariness fogged my brain. Beyond the windows, the rain gained a lulling and hypnotic pattern. A yawn stretched free as my eyelids slid shut. "The book is overdue." I snapped to attention. Above, the clock read a little after midnight. I could barely read it in the vague moonlight. The rain outside phased into a deep mist, barring any view beyond the immediate. Who turned off the lights? The hairs on my neck lifted. In the polished bronze of the nearby lamp, a warped, pale face peered at me. I stumbled to the floor and scurried back into the corner. My heart pounded in my chest. Cool sweat soaked my clothes. Nothing. No one. I breathed deep, compelling my heart to stop racing. No one was there. It was your own face, moron. I cursed my own stupidity. Whipping to the shelves, I saw a book resting on the plush carpet. It was freshly fallen. The person who'd knocked it off was far from view. I eased forward. Another popped forward, and another. My skin chilled. I leapt back, face twisting fear. Soon the books cascaded from the shelves. Overdue. Something sharp and cold, like fingernails, dragged across my cheek. I fell to my knees and scrambled towards the door. Colder and colder the room grew. Stiffness gripped my legs and arms. Frigidity ate into my lungs. Just as my fingers brushed the handle, I fell to the floor. Dawn was up before I was. The instant cognizance reemerged, I ran to my car, my hands fumbling at the keys. I smacked my head on the doorframe as I entered. A great crack struck the interior. Hissing in pain, I turned the ignition. The engine sputtered and growled. Starting, however, seemed beyond its capabilities. I wish I could have expected different. My head throbbed as I re-entered the library. Above me, the clock now read 4:30. I sat back on my heels. Hunger gnawed at my stomach. My back and eyes ached from staring at the covers. Gulliver's Travels, however, was nowhere in sight. The air took on a crisp edge. "I'm looking! I'm looking!" I half wailed, half screamed. I closed my eyes. Where else would it be? Where else would it be? I shuffled to the mental catalogue of my last few years living here. Fingers curled against my hair. I fell back. In the nearby lamp I could see a figure in a black dress lean closer to me. Fetid breath showered my head. "Wait!" The words crackled from my throat. A memory emerged. "He didn't take it out. I did." The fingers withdrew, but the figure stayed in place. I loved that book." The figure remained still. "Overdue." "I kept it in my nightstand." No response was given. Slowly I rose from my seated position. "I'll go get it." The figure stepped back, but did not leave. It hovered in my peripherals. I left the library, my footfall muffled as I went up the carpeted steps. My old room lay a little ways from the landing. As I entered, I softened at the sight. Peeling Metallica posters lay opposite a long, vacant lizard terrarium. To either side of the bed, which was covered with my grandmother's quilt, sat my nightstands. They were blessedly unchanged. My hands trembled as I approached. They'd still be there. Sliding the drawer open, I saw the promised book. My fingers caressed the worn paper cover. Turning, I stood face to face with her. She was tall, floating an inch above the floor. The moon's glow peeked through the clouds, revealing her translucent nature. Blueness curdled beneath her pale skin. Perfectly coiffed gray hair coiled atop her head. Pince-nez glasses settled on her nose. Behind the glass were hollow sockets. They studied me like I was an insect under glass. My mouth dried. Hands shaking, I extended the book to her. Her fingers, arthritic and swollen, clasped it to her chest like it was treasure. A smile curled her soured look. "The last one. The last. Overdue." Her voice smoothed and warmed. Slowly she stepped back. The wall behind her grew more defined. She was fading, and yet, the longer I looked, the more familiar she became. A soft blue glow grew behind her glasses. It coalesced, in a constellation's manner, into pale eyes. They settled on me with a surprising amount of warmth. Lemon essential oils, bibliosmia, and sunshine flooded over me. The frozen fare in my veins thawed. Goodbye, Mrs. Franklin. I smiled. A call Monday morning revealed she'd passed the same evening as my grandfather.